Welcome back, subscribers. Pardon my attire. I'm usually dressed a little bit nicer, but it's a Saturday. It's February the 28th, and I've got things to do today. So at any rate, I wanted to kind of get this out because it's fresh. It just came out on the wire uh, 15 hours ago. So this is about the Secretary of War, Hegseth, saying that he's severing ties. The United States government is severing ties with the Ivy Leagues and elite universities on education for graduate programs, and this was it's a concern, and I'm going to say why. I'm going to explain why. Again, like what we do here in the reservoir is, I have a different knowledge base than the vast majority. I'm an entrepreneur, and we're always looking at information between the lines. We have a different skill set than the vast majority, and whenever I see headlines and things like this come out, that they read a hell of a lot different to me than, and it's automatic. I've kind of figured a lot of other people that are supposedly awakened and know what's going on would be able to understand like these elements and things that are happening, and that's what came to my attention, is that no, in fact, that they don't know. They're getting the surface level. Uh, I don't know. It's not even watered down. It's like it's a directive that your mind automatically would go into a specific decision space because you don't have any other information to build on. You don't have an understanding of what's actually happening behind the scenes. And at any rate, so I'm gonna explain a little bit about this really quick, just so you have an understanding of the two separate perspectives. But my perspective is going to be far different because it's a lot more dynamic, and than just saying like, well, that's kind of stupid for the United States government to cut ties for the graduate program to these elite institutions. Like, where are they supposed to get their educations? All right. And if you go through whatever, I think Reddit's crap, but you just start looking at the generalized headlines, you're going to see the same thing. Like, this seems to be like a kind of a bonehead move by the United States government. And on the contrary, it's a it's a it's a very intelligent move, and it is. This doesn't necessarily put me in the mix of the current administration by any stretch. I've talked about being very agnostic when it comes to uh, politico and religious and so on. Basically, like anything that has a belief system tied to it is, and absolutely the government is a belief system, just like anything else. But I'm here doing business, and I live here, and I follow the rules and how they decide to. Roll out their agendas, and then business owners just have to basically go along with it. It doesn't matter what your personalized agenda is. So I'll just get to it. Yeah, on surface level, this seems kind of stupid. A lot of people don't know that in the military that we have ties not only internally in our family in the military, but also from just also friends and people that have been through our environment, that we have a very a better than most knowledge of how the system works. So a lot of people don't know this, especially when you get into the higher education levels, on how it actually really works. Most people think about it probably from the enlisted perspective, like you're just gonna go down and sign up with your recruiter and so on. But there's a lot of jobs inside the military that require high levels of education, and it was, now I don't know what's going to happen now, but it was a really great environment to be able to go into and further your education and have basically the government pay for it. You have to give your service up to the government and become a pincushion and so on and so on. But you have access to educations that otherwise normal people wouldn't be able to have access to, or you don't have the capital resources to be able to do it. So we've got people that are inside of our space that they've been to the Naval Academy, West Point. We don't have anybody that went to the Air Force Academy out in Colorado. We don't have anyone that was in that, but we investigated it. My eldest daughter was very, very close to actually going into. We were preparing for her to go into Naval Academy. She was interested in going that direction, and she actually had a really easy in to get into it. So She just couldn't pass the physical. She has scoliosis, and she couldn't pass the physical because of the curvature of her spine. But other than that, she was like, it was that's how we know a lot about it. And then we had internal friends of the family that had also been through. We had somebody who was retired military, and Carol Ann was, she and both her two brothers went to West Point, and she finished her stint with the Army, and basically just kind of told us the ins and outs of basically how the whole system works, and telling, these stories about how, her education and everything that she'd gotten was all paid for, and how it was a good life. It was, she, to be retired in your 40s and go do and start another career is what these people do. And, telling stories about her brother, just screwing around at Duke, getting his, he ended up getting, a financial graduate degree, and a number of them got law degrees, and just for basically something to do, or it was inside of the space that they were inside of the military. So the military, then you're enlisted in the military, and depending upon what department you're in, you need more education, and that's what they're doing. So when you're enlisted and you're doing your time, you're getting paid, but you're also getting basically paid to go and get an education at one of these Ivy League schools, but you're under the umbrella of the United States government. So, but they have to be mixing with the rest of the population, which, if the agendas of the schools are, this kind of like a woke mentality, or hard left-leaning mentality, that it goes against that space. So military people just kind of keep their nose clean, and because they're following the rules of whatever their orders are, and they don't get sucked in to that environment. But it does start to contaminate from the inside, because those ideologies do not coincide with war elements. It doesn't jive. They don't mix. So anyway, Hank Sith comes out and says that the United States government is severing ties to these Ivy League and high level institutions, and people again would say, like, that's really bad. So what does this tell me? My first initial thoughts were, okay, we're getting close to this this impending, conflict. There, like, internally, that we know of there being a because we read the signs, essentially, that most people don't really know where this is all going. That's why I cover a lot of the digital side, the compliance side, right? What's happening, cryptocurrencies, what's that all about? Your telephone and all the tracking and everything else. So this is a vitally important element that happens pre-conflict. Okay, so what happens pre-conflict is there's a circling of the wagons, if you will, that happens. And so this is telling me, like, on the world stage, that they're preparing. And again, if you look at some of the other things that are happening internationally, whether it's Iran or even the narcos stuff down in Mexico, there's a number of hotspots. China and Taiwan, there's a number of hotspots that are already, like, a concern. And it's like, how concerning are those spaces based upon what's going on in the news, and what is the chess moves of the government, and what is the government doing? So whenever they do this, my first initial reaction, first of all, was, okay, the government's done, doesn't need your shit anymore. We've gotten all the education that we need, and thanks for playing. We got it from here. So all the AI systems, all of the backdoor, the security, the cybersecurity, and all these elements that are behind the scenes that are running, that we're kind of using right now in the United States, whether it's your mobile phone, or you're logging into your desktop, and all the two-party authentications and everything else, be like, it's supposedly to keep you secure, and be like, well, that's basically, it's creating a digital moat around the United States. And the reason is because whenever they decide to kick off the festivities of these blood sacrifice war elements, that these controllers that are above the United States government, the U.S. government is just a player in the whole system. So there are elements that are above that people don't understand. And you have to play. If you don't play, then you go away. As simple as that. And the United States is in a a lot better position than most. And I think that there's a lot of rhetoric out there that gets people to believe that the U.S. is weak and all this other shit. um, that's not the case moving forward. There's there's new players that are on the game board of the world for sure, but the United States is still there isn't going to be one world dominant order. That's not what's in store, and we know that because of the information stuff that we have in our internal private site, and that's the reason why I don't talk about it in public. But for something like this, it's just basically like a preparation warning. It's not anything really to be uh, super concerned about. It's going to come into your consciousness and it's going to be an issue, but just to let everyone know that this is what happens about every 3 cycles, and they do this basically to clean out the weaker bunch. It's a draconian survival of the fittest thing that comes in. And I think there is a pretty decent sized faction of spiritualists and new earthers and all this other business that there's going to be breakaway energy that people aren't going to put up with it and they're not going to fight and so on and so on, and be like, well, whether or not they leave the planet or the ones that are left here are going to continue on with the same behavior that's always been here, it really doesn't matter, because you're going to be going on your own path anyway. Yeah. So what I would say is that if you have my concern personally in my family is we started preparing for this years ago, and then I was basically sliding my family members into my children into environments that were pro-military elements, not necessarily like enlisting in the military, but being able to have a use case that the military would need, a value, okay, inside of that system, so that if the time came to be that there was any type of a draft or anything like that, and I'm not saying that everybody's going to get drafted. I'm just saying, like, if there's a conflict, you bet your ass that they will absolutely get people to pony up. And this is another element. You saw this in the Vietnam War, that they were just pulling people from anywhere, and there's an absolute draconian dark element to it that is it's terrible. But if it does happen, which it does, this is a consistent cycle. It's a rhyme that always happens in history. I don't think that you're outside of that just because we're more communicative to nowadays with social media and so on, that it's just not going to happen and people are going to stand up against it and be like, no, it's just not. It's way above you. So what you can do is put yourself into a position that you go with it. You end up like going directly into it. We had family members in our world that when the Vietnam War happened, they enlisted, not necessarily to defend democracy, but they knew that if they enlisted, they got to choose what they wanted to do when they went in. So instead of being thrown in as a bullet sponge, they could actually choose and help out the cause. So if you're going to sit and cower and piss in your boots, you're going to have a problem. You're absolutely going to have a problem, because they know it. So they're ultimately into having doers and people that are not weak-minded. That's the whole environment of the military. And if people have never been inside of that space, there is no you do what they say. And so what we did was, the only one that I was really concerned with was my son. It's possible that they could draft females too, which is a very woke thing, and I think it's terrible. But it basically puts on to that side to believe that, well, if you want everything to be equal, that's fine. We're going to draft you too. And I've seen plenty of these interviews on the streets where they ask females about being drafted, and then they come to the realization like, oh, well, but they wouldn't do that. Be like, well, if you're into it, then yeah, that's absolutely what would happen. And I don't know of that. I don't know what that outcome would look like. I think that would be that's absolutely heinous. It's terrible. Putting females on frontline situations. I don't know. That would be, maybe that's what these psychopath crazies are thinking in their heads. They're like, oh, let's just try women this time. Let's see what'll happen. I don't know. But on the male side, so I only have one male in my family I have to protect as a father, and my son, uh, he was interested in avionics and mechanics, like mechanical elements and technical elements. And so he's only like 6 months away from getting his FAA license. So there's a huge value, like somebody that has can repair those elements. I was like, well, I told him, like, we knew about this years ago. And I said, when he went in and started, doing this, even before that, I said, well, yeah, I said, this would be a good trade for you to be able to have under your belt, regardless of what you do in the future. Because if the shit hits the fan, I said, and you get called up, I said, they're not going to put you in, a frontline situation. You're not going to be in that space. And I said, you get to continue to keep doing the things that you have been, you already have an education for, because it's needed by the military. So, um, there's still plenty of time. Like, if you have some kind of skill that is used in that space, and it's not it's survival mechanism, but they're going to sell it like they always do. Like, you're defending, the flag and the country and everything else, which is absolutely correct. But how they get there isn't any good. They're the bones of it are just absolutely it's brutal, as always. So at any rate, what this tells me is that we're on like this news that I was talking about today about Hankseth. They're severing ties, saying like, okay, thanks for playing, thanks for educating our people. We're not going to do business with you guys anymore, and you guys are on your own, and we're going to cut off sending our people there, which also cuts off a lot of money to these colleges, because it's there's no it's direct. We're going to send people in there, and their tuitions are covered and so on. So when that happens, the question people would say, like, well, that's really stupid. Some of these comments, that's really stupid because, they're not going to get educations anymore, and the government isn't going to be educating their their upper brass. And be like, no, they're done with you. They're telling you, like, we don't need you guys anymore. Thanks for building the system. Thanks for building the AI and all the cybersecurity and all this other crap that is behind the scenes that we need pre-conflict. All right. And then after the conflict, and then the dust clears, we're just going to see who's standing. And then, since you guys need us again, we'll go in and then we'll set the terms of the new contract, and then we'll send people back down. But where it sits right now, yeah, thanks for playing. Because whenever these war elements start kicking in, things get really tight. There's a lot less looseness inside of the environment. And I got like Manhattan Project vibes, when I had, went through the story, and I'm like, oh man. So they basically, they do this is that whenever a conflict is either on the horizon or happening, they start circling the wagons, and they start cutting off direct ties with civilian populations, because they're preparing for conflict. And so this will fast track, because it can't happen for a really long time, because you still have to educate your people. So they can't throw them all into West Point or Annapolis or whatever. So and besides, they don't have the they don't have the graduate programs anyway. So that's why they send them to these other colleges. So yeah, so look for, I guess, if I'm trying to position myself moving forward, this is going to affect financials, absolutely. Wartime financial situation is not is actually the reason why we have conflicts on this planet anyway. It doesn't have anything to do with belief systems and ideology. That's what they sell everybody on, but it's all about commerce and business, trade, divvying up territory, who gets what resources, and so on. It's this giant worldwide chess match. That's what's happening. And anybody that is into financial sectors and sees all of the elements and problems that we already have currently, that you should be paying attention to this. So what I'm saying is, like, this is looming. This is a we had information internally from sources, and then also putting together like our kind of timeline. We kind of have a loose running timeline of when things will probably start kicking off, and whenever it becomes in the consciousness of the general population. Let's put it to you that way. Like, there's a lot of people that are aware of this, but don't really know how it's going to be orchestrated. And this is just another little piece of the puzzle that identifies, like, okay, we're getting pretty close. So when that happens, you won't be able to travel. You won't be able to, if you travel, to be domestic, or if you do travel, it's going to have to be for business only. You're going to have a reason to travel. It's not that they're going to totally cut it off. I think initially speaking, when this happens, yeah, there'll ground flights and things like that. And again, we went through all those tests just to see if it was possible to ground flights. What are we going to do with all these freaking airplanes? Oh, let's do a test. So 2020 had a number of tests. If they lose petroleum resources, remember whenever they cut the petroleum off to the East Coast and we didn't have any, it was a computer glitch and they couldn't. Well, they're doing these by they're not by chance. It's just to basically do a dry run just to kind of see, what are the impacts and the repercussions to those spaces if supply chains are broken. And that's ultimately, because that's what happens during conflict. So you can start to see these things, like if you were going to be going into a conflict, you'd want to see, like, all right, based upon how broad and expansive our system is in the United States in commerce, if fuel gets shut down to the East Coast, if this happens, if whatever happens, cybersecurity situation happens, if people can't, there's no internet, they've got so many things that are in place that that's what it's telling me. It appears like it's a technology moving forward, but if they're non-normal elements that are happening inside the environment, it's identifying that they're just preparing and just kind of like taking an inventory of how the populations respond and how business carries on with these hang points, hang up points. So yeah, when the Department of War comes out and starts talking about education like that, I mean, like that's a big problem. So anyway, moving forward, probably summer. They always like to kind of kick these things off summertime, get things rolling. A lot of times it usually happens for March, that it happens in the spring, that there's because the ones that are behind this are whether they're worshiping it or it just happens energetically this way. I think it's a combination of both. It's like, March is ruled by Mars. Mars is the god of war. You kind of get the picture. So March would probably be a concern. I don't, there's elements like astrologers are probably going to pick up on this and just run with it like crazy. I haven't looked at those charts. I do follow some of it to a degree, just to kind of give me an idea of another data point. But I also look at the geopolitical elements and like what they're actually really doing, which kind of gives me an identifier of like how long that could last and what's the solution after. And if they don't give a solution saying that we're going to cut ties, with these institutions, then, well, what are you going to do to educate your people? And they don't even bring it up because they're not worried about it, because there's a freaking problem looming on the horizon. That's which you should be looking at. So financial wise, yeah, you're talking like people's retirements, 401ks. You're talking about like local business suffering and struggling. It could be supply chains with so it's not like go bag freak out. It's just like we'll get through it. It's just something that happens like with cycles. But this time around is a little bit different because the mass majority of this is electronic. It's going to be a information consciousness war is what we know of internally. That's the number one element, and being able to stay grounded in it. And then it's cyber electronic warfare that is going to really be hard and heavy into this, with kinetic elements on top of it. So it's going to be a very dynamic space, and the warmongers at the top are probably just salivating and I don't know what they're doing. They got their goat skin chaps on. They're ready for the next sacrifice. It's crazy. So yeah. So anyway, so for probably like March, into the summertime, that's when I think that you're going to see something that is going to be kinetic. You're going to see something that is like you're not able to not see it. Okay. But behind the scenes, they're already like setting the table, for the meal. It's crazy. So preparing yourself and just knowing that if they do pull people up and so on, that you're not going to be able to run from it. Again, like you can't get out of the border. That's another thing, is the immigration. That's another one that is super identifiable on whenever this starts to happen and there's conflicts, because whenever the conflicts start, that whoever is inside of the space is playing for that team. Okay. And that's another factor that you have to look at. And that has been in the news like crazy, all the deportations. So they're sending out these crews and they're saying, like, okay, get the ones out that really, we don't want them on the team, get them out of here. And it's not anything to do with about rights and all this other shit. It's just, it's go time. And, you know, I don't know. We'll see what happens. We're already prepared for it. But it's something that you need to be aware of. And but we'll get through it. I know we'll get through it. It's a kind of a natural cycle. It's a kind of a death and rebirth cycle, and that's just basically what happens here on this planet. You can't get away from it. It's they're bare-boned hermetic principles. It's a light and dark. It's a good and evil. It's you name it. But in order to create the new space, they have to get rid of some of the old chaff. And then that separates it, brings in the new stock, and so on and so on. So I'm not really into it. It's not like I worship it, but I know that it's a necessary evil that is, they make a business out of it, and we're the ones that get to play the game. But you can decide if you want to play the game and be afraid of it and get turned over in the soil, or you can just follow through and be the best you can be on the team that you're in. And that's, I guess, what really the message is about this. And just keep your head on a swivel and keep paying attention to some of these news articles and things that come out. And maybe, and then maybe come check us out. And that's why we've created this internal community, because any of the information that's going to happen in the public forum space, you think you had censoring before, be like, nope. They will cut you off, and you will not be able to do, you won't be able to get any information out. So by setting up internalized, privatized communities, you'll have more protection, because it's not public, because people have to pay in a transaction because you're doing business. So anyway, that's also why we're doing what we're doing. There'll be more to come. I said I'll see more of these elements and things like that. I usually don't cover current event things, but this is kind of our the outlet through YouTube is, I'm just basically doing, like I said, for advertisement for the community that we're building. And yeah, so it's open to that. Lots of things I end up talking, it's very broad. I talk about like consciousness and business, crypto, all kinds of different things, because it's all coming to play right now. It's like all the demons and all the angels are all coming out to play for this, because they're it's the Olympics of consciousness and human activity right now as we speak. So it's going to be the best of times and the worst of times. Absolutely. It always is. This is what happens. And human beings love it. I don't give a shit what you say. Human beings absolutely are addicted to being afraid. They're being addicted into being scared. They're addicted into some of the most heinous things. And they'll say that they don't like it, but they're the ones that are paying to go to horror movies. They're the ones that they're poisoning their bodies. They're the ones that are, doing all these things that are, they're lying, they're cheating, they're stealing, they're doing all these things that are not of the light divine perspective. And at the end of the day, that's what they like. They like it. So all they're doing is they're just serving up for what the population really likes and just setting the stage. And that's why they call war theater. So anyway, there'll be more to come. Cheers.